bunch of misfits I ever set eyes on.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into a special edition Misfit podcast. Monday, December 8th, the Misfit affiliate WANJIRU phase gets started. You can head to teammisfit.com, click on the sign up now button, get 2 weeks for free at SugarWOD, StreamFit, or Push Press. We're going to take a deep dive into what the phase is all about, talk about some of the progressions from one phase to another. And, we mention it each time we do this podcast, but I think it's important to say that this is very much a narrative builder for your gym. So if this is coaches listening to this or members listening to this, rallying behind and around a concept can be really powerful within a gym. And then it's a little bit of an audition for us. We're going to talk through how we think about programming, how we think about coaching these movements in an affiliate setting for those gyms that are looking to make the switch. And again, you can get started for 2 weeks for free. We're going to do this episode a little bit different. We're going to do housekeeping. Then we are going to talk about the phase, and then we are going to do live chat with some special extras at the end of the podcast, partially because I have a new co-host next week. Don't worry, I'll try to bribe Hunter as much as possible to get him in on some affiliate stuff. But if you've been listening to the podcast recently, or maybe haven't been living under a rock, Hunter has taken over as the owner of Misfit Gym Portland, and I am coming to you from what looks like an empty room in Colorado. So housekeeping, let's talk about a little bit of housekeeping here. One thing that we should try to ramp up, and it's on us and it's on the affiliates and it's on new affiliates getting signed up, but is the chatter in the affiliate channel of the Telegram. Would love to see more people in there, and I'm going to set some reminders to do maybe some weekly prompts and just check in on people. But always good to sort of talk with other coaches, to talk with other people that are doing the program, coaching the program, all that good stuff. A lot of times the questions that I get via email are kind of FAQs, the kind of thing that could be helpful for you to ask in the Telegram and have more people see the answer to. The second thing, I extended the early bird pricing for camp at CrossFit Roots in Boulder, Colorado, January 30th through February 1st, because I did not want to mix it in with all of the promotion for Black Friday stuff and clothing collections and whatnot. So you're going to see some content this week related to camp. You can get signed up at the link in bio on our Instagram. Again, Boulder, Colorado, CrossFit Roots, January 30th through February 1st. This is probably the best place that you can go if you want to make a connection between our programming and our coaching style. You're going to get a firsthand look at how we coach things, how we break things out. And while you don't get, 20, 30, 40, 60 minutes in an affiliate class to do things, when we do those longer breakouts at camp, what's really cool is as a coach, you get a lot of ideas for the ways that you can do your little group breakouts, the way that you can explain workouts, the way that you can explain warm-ups, things of that nature. And then we have a Q&A, and we're always just kind of around during the break. So if you guys have questions, I think it's a really fantastic place for coaches as well as athletes. So make sure you get signed up here in the next 3 or 4 days. Actually, I think it's the 5th. I think I have it set for Friday. So make sure you get signed up. You can get signed up after that, but you're going to have to give us an extra $50 because if we add people sort of at the last minute, we have to potentially make some changes to our coaching staff. So we like to know what's going on there. And if you're looking for our individual programming, you can obviously head to the link in bio on our Instagram as well and get signed up on Fitter or Strivey. Last but not least, this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gorilla Mind. It's my favorite place to get supplements. Moving and driving and all that has been sponsored by maybe a few too many of these Gorilla Mind energy drinks. But if you look at the ingredients in them, basically you're mixing a couple of cups of coffee with some really powerful nootropics, the kind of thing that you would have to pay quite a bit for in pill form. So you can head to gorillamind.com, use the code word Misfit, or you can go to gorillamind.com/Misfit. And again, thank you to everybody who's been buying so far. And I would love to hear what you guys think of the products. All right, Hunter, WANJIRU. I am going to bury the lead a little bit here and not say why I named it this, because I would like a live reaction to what you thought of Sammy WANJIRU at the, I believe, 2010 Chicago Marathon. What did you see,
Dude,
when I sent you that?
Yeah, well, the 3.5 minute video that kind of gave like a brief overview of Sammy, his like the 20-second version of his history, and then kind of skip to the end of the race. Where who was he racing at the end? Do you remember?
I don't remember. No.
Yeah,
The
one of it, like
favorite in the race.
the favorite fellow like Kenyan rival peer sort of thing, and they just kind of like tailed him at the end of the race where they basically got super close. One pulled ahead, one pulled behind, then one would leave the other 100 meters and behind him and whatever. Sammy ended up coming back and winning. But I was saying before, watching that takes like 12 layers of imagination to even like consider fathoming what was occurring, because at the end of the race he came in at 2:06, I believe, 2 hours and 6 minutes. So just like, okay, layer number one of imagination, a 2 hour and 6 minute marathon. Okay, I can't even fathom that. Let's next layer. Okay, well, that's a 4 minute and 48-second mile average for over 2 hours. Like, okay, I can't fathom what a single mile at that pace is like. Okay, can you fathom a 1 minute and 10-second 400-meter run? And then it's like, okay, holy fuck, like that's an aggressive pace for a lot of people. That's still faster than their best ever 400, and these guys are running it for 2 hours straight. Okay, I can kind of fathom that. Now try to fathom running at that pace, having run at that pace for 2 previous hours, and now you're at the end of a 2-hour CrossFit Metcon, and like victory is you having to go faster for the last, I don't know, I'm curious to actually know when they kind of started that back and forth, because it wasn't like the last 200 meters, right? It's like the last half a mile, last mile really maybe.
Big push with 400 meters to go, but if you look at their pace and the timing, we were watching roughly 1,200 meters.
Yeah, so you are now watching after having run at an unfathomable pace for an unfathomable amount of time, and now we're watching these two like literally change gears at what is 47th gear for all of us peasants, right? It's like at a near sprint pace, these guys are fluctuating their pace. It's like, okay, now I'm running at a 105, now I'm running at a 102, now I'm back to a 115 because like I'm behind 100 meters, and just the ability, like the energy system capacity, and we're obviously talking about world-class marathon, super sport-specific athletes, but like, again, trying to fathom how those guys are able to do that mentally and physically is just fucking mind-numbing. It's like, it's hard enough to try to race somebody the last 200 meters of your sad 15-minute AMRAP, to come in the door and get a couple of pride points on the whiteboard, let alone this is an Olympic race with all kinds of like crazy background and history and injuries and comebacks and stuff like that, all to be like, finished in the last 3 minutes. It turns what started as a 2 hour and 6 minute race turned into a 3-minute race at that pace. It's just like, and good fucking
it's hard
gravy.
To know, but it felt like he was messing with him a little bit before his big push, because Sammy looks bad. His body language throughout that video, especially for the first half of the video, first like 90 seconds, he's in rough shape. He
should throw this clip in the like podcast notes so people can
classically didn't seem to care, which is kind of the basis for why we named the phase this. But he's kind of toying with him a little bit, and then they get to the final 400 and it's uphill. And he just takes off uphill. And his body language completely changes. And he's sprinting. And he's got his little like celebration at the end where he's pointing at the different people in the crowd. And you can see the guy behind him.
He won by 19 seconds too. Yeah. After all of that, he got ahead by
that guy's body language for trying to kick with him was hilarious. You can just see this blurry figure in the background, like so incredibly unwell, which is amazing. So I looked at the phase, what we've got for what we're going to bias in this phase. And I saw 5x5 back squat, gymnastics, pulling, and rowing. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to intentionally curse here, but you walk into the gym and by fucking osmosis, you're going to get fitter. That is a stimulus bomb, those movements, right? Like those are movements where you look at the whiteboard and you got to take a deep breath. Like if we programmed a squat, row, chest to bar workout, you know you're in for something. And we're going to bias those movements throughout the phase. And I was like, I sort of inspired by the idea of, you know, back in the day, it was if you deadlift heavy, your CNS won't work for 6 months. And they did actual research on it. And no, if you go long and keep your heart rate high, that's when you get that real CNS dump. And it makes sense, right? Try harder for longer, more tired. Like, it's a pretty straightforward. So I was like, is there a Steve Prefontaine in the endurance community? Like, who is known as the person who was willing to push to a place that really is like antithetical to the idea of endurance? And every single response that I found on the internet was Sammy WANJIRU. And he's known for trying to break people in the first half of a marathon. So basically running too fast so that he can have people sort of fall behind. And he famously missed when he won the Olympic gold medal. He was very young when he won the Olympic gold medal. Might have been the youngest, or it was something like he was the youngest since 1932. He missed a water station, and that's like
Elroy.
as big of a no-no as you can get. And the dude behind him caught up to him and gave him a water bottle. The dude that ended up coming in fourth, which is just crazy. So yeah, when I think stimulus bomb, I think long and dirty and like, you know, it's.
I think stimulus bomb is the right way to do it. Like between the machine rotations, some of the benchmarks that get tested and retested, and just like literally the 5x5 back squat session in and of itself is a stimulus bomb. So
yeah, for sure. So this phase again starts on Monday, December 8th. It is 7 weeks long, and we'll make our way through here on what we're going to bias and how we think about that coaching at the affiliate level. How many hours? So at the end of this episode, we're going to have a conversation about the swear meter. One thing that would be more challenging to figure out, but would be the second most important meter on this podcast, would be how many minutes we've spent talking about sets of 5 back squatting. 5x5 Texas method. Like, it would be nice to feed every podcast transcript into AI and have it tell us.
Render a video with sentences that are only the words 5 by and 5.
Oh my God, that'd be great. So Texas method, for those who don't know, traditionally every single week you find a 5 rep max, and then you do 90% of your 5 rep max for 5x5. Now, we're not going to do that in the affiliate setting, but luckily we've been crazy enough and young enough and naive enough in the past to toy around with different ways to find the correct version in stimulus related to this. So what it turns into in this phase is you do find that 5 rep max in week 1, and then you do some work related to that. But as you go after that, it is the classic starting strength style of 5x5 linear progression. And that's really what we want, because if we're not super dialed in on where to start and where to go, we have too much fluctuation in an affiliate setting for a Texas method. This style, again, that has been adjusted a little bit this way and a little bit that way, and we've kind of found that sweet spot, allows someone to really find how heavy they can go early, and then we're going to dial them back and be like, okay, if let's say, you know, what you're working on today is a little bit easier than it's supposed to be, we're going to keep you at that weight, and we're going to have you squat with incredible form and maybe stand up a little bit faster, get some of that force production, because then you are training your body to handle adaptation, get those build-up weeks that we would normally get in a Texas method. And then when we get into week 3, week 4, week 5, we start to have really the meat of the phase there. And if there are any affiliate athletes listening, I will say, do not bring, we've said this a bunch of times to our competitive athletes, do not bring session 3 or 4 or 5 into session 5, 6, 7. And what I mean by that is you will do a 5x5 during this phase where you're like, can't go heavier. It's not going to happen. And then you will have a subsequent in the next week or the week after where it's easier and you're 5 or 10 pounds heavier. And it's central nervous system. It's what else is in the programming that week. There's so many different factors. Could be your headspace, could be, you know, your pal canceled on class or the music sucks. or whatever it is. There's so many reasons why it could
that
go
last
exactly
one.
how you want. Or, had a breakthrough with an athlete, coaching in my last week at the gym where it was like, have you tried bracing? It's like, your squat, you're strong as hell.
Don't fucking
and
tell
your
me that.
Squat
And sell it back to
is
you. Sell it.
gorgeous. So in my mind, I'm like, the only thing I want you to think about is squeezing as hard as you possibly can into your belt. Because then I think it was maybe sets of 5. It was definitely heavy. Yeah, I think it was sets of 5.
What was your
and
back
it was like,
squat day?
I can see your midline deteriorating. So why don't we just push into the belt the whole time? And it was like,
See the ice
and
cream
like it was a
melting.
bit of a joke after he was like, yeah, imagine bracing in a heavy back squat. And it's like, listen, you're good
All
at
right,
it.
man. I'll see you later.
Yeah. It's like you're good at it and you're strong, so you think that you can rely on just using that. And it's like, well, no, the heavier you go, the more your spine's going to be a little upset by not being surrounded by, contracted musculature. So, man, I don't know. What can we say? It works really well. It works for people who need to get stronger. It works for people who need muscle endurance. It works for people who care more about hypertrophy. It is the sweet spot for adaptation across different muscle fiber types, different skill levels. It's the best.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest point is that like 5x5 works for. There are not many workouts that you can write that work equally well for the beginner and the experienced CrossFitter alike. There's always some sort of like modification that probably needs to be made, with the exception of, the real like straightforward, hey, we're going to run and do burpees. You're going to go fast. You're going to go slow. It doesn't matter. The weightlifting equivalent of, of Cindy, of a 1 mile run for time that everybody can do is 5x5 back squat.
Yeah.
It just like, you just kind of hit on all of it. It's like when we do real heavy singles, say it's 7x1 heavy back squat. It's like, no doubt that's a stimulus bomb, but for the athlete who hasn't been squatting very long, just doesn't have the motor recruitment, the skill to do 7 really heavy singles, it's like, we probably need to modify for that person and make them do doubles or triples or something like that, so they get a little bit of volume and practice and they get the strength stimulus a different way. You do speed work, you do 3 reps at 50%, and you tell athletes to stand it up as fast as they can. Okay, I'm a really powerful athlete. Fuck, this is a great session. Problem is that most of your affiliate athletes are not, former athletes who are extremely powerful and can get a stimulus out of that. Again, your beginner, they're going to struggle to kind of understand the concept of speed because of skill, of, just experience, whatever it is. And then right smack in the middle, is that 5x5. You want athletes to do sets of 10. If things start to break down for a lot of people after a few reps, and it becomes more about bracing and their lower back stamina than their legs. Like 5x5, we don't usually see that. It's that sweet spot of, I can load this properly for everybody, essentially. It's a long enough time under tension that the stimulus is going to be there, again, regardless of who you are. It's not so long standing under a barbell that it no longer becomes about the back squat and becomes about, low back endurance, or, when's my arm gonna like wake back up after falling asleep. Yeah. It's like, we're not worried about almost any of those things with 5x5. And it's like you said, it gives athletes a lot of runway over the course of the 7 weeks, because it's the only phase of the year where that is the lift only day for a 7-week period. Maybe a little bit more biased away from a true GPP style versus, hey, for 7 weeks, we're going to be slightly less GPP. But the trade-off is really, really big, especially if you can get athletes coming in from most of those squat sessions. Maybe you tell athletes what those days are each week to give them so they can mark it on the calendar. Now, we don't want to go so far to say that we don't want people doing their conditioning to get in for the back squat day, but it works really well too. And at the end of the phase, whether an athlete PRs a 5-rep max or not, like all of that time spent squatting heavy, under tension, bracing, developing leg strength, like it translates just so well to not only everything else you do in the gym, but obviously just life in general, right? Put the body through the hips and knees through a full range of motion, brace your midline, stand the weight up. Like, it's about as functional as you get from a kind of, GPP longevity perspective.
So one thing that I want to bring up is that you get the either affiliate owners, coaches, or oftentimes more the athletes who are paying you a couple $100 a month to be the expert, where they want a metcon on that day. And honestly, like, I'm not going to get into that. I was going to create my new training methodology right there.
Fuck, I was getting ready to fucking shadow box in the corner, guy. Fuck, I got a balloon that needs to be popped out of anger.
Again, if you just did 5x5 back squat every day, you would end up tearing something. You wouldn't recover. It wouldn't go very well. If we get away from the conditioning side of things, that GPP magic doesn't happen. There is a competitor extra on every 5x5 back squat day that is a conditioning piece. And if your members truly need something like that, they can stay for an extra 30 minutes after class. So I know that there are some gyms that have asked, and every time they ask, I do my best to convince them to say, don't put that in class. The 5x5 back squat with the proper warm-up and the proper cool down is how we have those adaptations and how somebody comes back to you and thanks you when they get that new 5-rep max. But I want to talk a little bit about the coaching side of this, and you can take it in whatever direction you want in terms of how you're going to coach a class like that. But there is a little bit of an embrace debate thing that's top of mind with how a coach, specifically a coach and not a gym, coaches squat mechanics, and whether there's a right way, a wrong way, or how do you feel about it changing? And it's just top of mind because I teach a little bit more of the vertical torso skill transfer to the front squat, to the overhead squat. And there are still some coaches who are a little bit more L1, kind of sit into the squat, that sort of thing. And I wonder, sort of what your opinion is on that, and then what your opinion is on coaching that kind of class.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of think about two extreme ends of the spectrum. You've got on one extreme the like Mark Ripito low bar back squat, where that bar is slid well down onto your scaps. There is, your borderline looking at a horizontal shin, and it almost looks like if you pause somebody at the bottom of their back squat and you just turn their arms from back here to hanging down in front of them, they'd be in almost a deadlift setup position. The benefit to that is, in true Mark Ripito fashion, hip drive. And we can really, that forces a really, really closed hip. It also puts the majority of the loading into the posterior chain and the back, which I guess are the same thing, but the spine. But, and in a way, right, the spine. So, just that moment arm of the back angle being like this as opposed to this, there is a shearing force occurring at the spine. And while there's nothing inherently incorrect about that, because as a CrossFit coach, we teach more of a high bar back squat, probably somewhere in between. Like you said, you prefer the much more vertical, and I'd classify you as a little further, even further on the vertical squat kind of dimension than I would be. But as long as, to go back to the L1 thing, it's does the athlete retain a neutral spine throughout the entire range of motion, whether it's a vertical torso or, a super pitched forward one? Does the athlete's spine remain neutral, especially at the bottom of the squat? Is there any deviation in the lumbar spine? Because that's not really acceptable in either style of squat. Does the athlete express full range of motion through the ranges that they are physically capable of, right? So I'd say an issue that I have with a low bar back squat is that because of the angles that you're encouraged to be in and because of where the bar is positioned, and in order to keep the center of gravity over the middle of your foot, there has to be an aggressive pitch forward of the torso, which also means that hip depth is really, really difficult to obtain. If my shin is vertical, the only way that I can get below parallel is a really, really odd position that may be physically impossible just from a leverage and center of gravity standpoint. So if an athlete's not moving their hips, knees, and ankles through a full and safe range of motion, I'll probably criticize the efficacy of that squat.
Right.
So neutral spine, full safe range of motion, and kind of the other elements of hey, can we keep the weight centered predominantly in the foot, maybe a little towards the heel, but for the most part, let's just keep it centered. And then, which version of this squat There is a minor comfort element for the athlete. A low bar position for a lot of people is wildly uncomfortable. A super high bar position for people is wildly uncomfortable. And then there's the element of like, what is this person's anthropometry? What's their body proportions? Because not everybody is well suited to do a low bar back squat or a high bar back squat to position the bar in certain spots. And we just need to find the correct one.
I'm annoyed that I'm agreeing with you, just so you know. I kind of wanted to. Yeah.
No, so like, again, if like from there, it's like neutral spine, full safe range of motion. Aside from that, we can tinker with where does the bar exactly sit on the traps at the base of the neck, maybe a little bit lower. Does this look more like a, hey, you're going to initiate by setting your hips back? Or is it a little bit more of a, as long as we screw our feet in, I can actually get you to sit directly down and be a little bit more vertical. For me at the affiliate setting, it's way less about skill transfer from one movement to the next and more about, are we maximizing the efficacy of the back squat, which is, can we develop leg and core strength as well as expressing that strength through the maximum range of motion that an athlete's joints are capable of doing. And if we're changing the style of squat in order to lift more, but in exchange for, hey, I'm just not going to squat as low, or yeah, my spine angle is not as great here, I'm never going to make that trade. So that's kind of how I think about the styles. I think they're both like effective, and if taught correctly, and probably more importantly, like if a coach understands these concepts and can look at an athlete and say like, hey man, I know I just told everybody that we're going to squat like this, but looking at your hips, I actually want you to turn your toes out a little bit and bring your heels in, because it looks like the hips are pinching, you're not getting low enough, your torso's rounding, your torso's pitched forward and you're rounding in your back. So I'm going to personalize my, general cue to be specific to you, because like, I need a neutral spine, I need a midline that's braced, and I need full range of motion with your joints. If we do all three of those things, we're good to go.
Yeah, I personally like teaching, and normally I wouldn't tell an athlete this, so earmuffs if you're an athlete, this is for coaches only. I believe that the vertical squat cue is an over cue that typically yields a better squat for more athletes across the board. I don't actually think that each athlete needs to squat that way. The example would be, I have long shins and I am in an incredibly unsafe position with my spine if I sit back in my spine. If you have long femurs, it's the opposite. When you're in that position, you've got this, big wide base underneath you and underneath your torso. And I'm essentially setting rules for each athlete. Like we do this at camp where we find your ideal squat position. So we start with the feet, and it's like, okay, in the best case scenario, I'm going to have an athlete go as wide as they can, big toe and heel touching the ground with their toes pointing forward to create a little bit of torque in the hip, as long as their knees can track outside of their feet. So that's kind of where I start. But then as we start to squat and we see which athletes need to bring their feet in, which athletes need to turn their toes out. And like one thing that I really try to get rid of is the athlete who sets up in the ideal position and then their body moves as they start to squat or during their squat. We had one athlete whose every time they did their first squat, their left toe would turn, maybe an inch, something like that, or their foot would turn out. And it's like, that's your squat stance. If you want to work on that, that's squat holds, that's couch stretch, that's banded distraction, that's working on your ankles, it's flossing your knees, it's doing all of these things, it's getting your glutes involved so that you can actually use those. But when we're squatting, you need to squat in your squat stance. But I find that if I get people to really try to squat between their feet and use those principles and find their own squat stance, things like the midline bracing, things like the skill transfer, and not necessarily for the sport, but just for we're going to ask you to have the bar in the front rack a lot in CrossFit. And what I don't want is for your first cue to make you feel like the bar is going to dump forward. I think a squat is a squat is a squat. And I want to see how close I can get all those to blend together over time. So again, the real answer is your squat is going to change based on you, but I personally find that the over-cueing of teaching athletes to squat between their feet to try to look a little bit more like an Olympic lifter typically yields a safer and stronger squat, even though we end up landing at, kind of that, like I would say at camp, tight is strong. Like if you're squatting and it feels kind of comfy, then you probably don't have hip tension, and we're going to see things like your arches are going to cave, your knees are going to cave, your midline's going to round, like that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think what you said kind of at the end there, like regardless of what the cue is, like it's the end result that you're assessing, right? Like I might tell somebody like to try to think of a good example, like someone who maybe they try to squat too upright and the result is their entire posterior chain is completely turned off. So I initiate my squat. Coach told me to keep my
bit of heel, the little air
maybe the
under
heel comes up, and then when they realize their heels are up, they replant their heels and the hips go back and now they're in a weird spot. I might cue the athlete, hey, I want you to send your hips kick those hips far back. I want your chest pointed at the ground. And like in a vacuum, you snip that clip on the internet and say, Hunter says, send your hips way back and point your chest on the ground. It's like, that's not a general cue that I'm going to give everybody. It's a specific athlete who's doing something wrong, and I'm going to overcompensate and overcorrect and tell them to do something really far in the opposite direction in order to get them where I want them to be, which is actually just neutral. I'd say one other thing too, I think for like coaches, because the squat is, I don't have to tell you, we could do an entire podcast on the squat alone, and maybe we're on track to do that right now. But one of the biggest things, again, from like a GPP, just general population perspective, a huge theme that I've noticed over the last handful of years, one of the core concepts in CrossFit that defines functional movement is posterior chain engagement. And it is maybe the thing that the broad general CrossFit community does the worst at. The result, what that looks like is, rounded backs during deadlifts. Why does my back hurt when I run, when I do a combination of box jumps and wall balls or hinging and squatting together? It is not necessarily intuitive how to use the posterior chain. All of us human beings, our day-to-day life is not necessarily conducive to using those muscles, right? You sit on those muscles the entire day, so everything gets shut off. You're not getting blood circulating to them. If you sit in front of a desk all day and you're only getting a couple, 1,000, 2,000 steps, like you're not setting yourself up for success. You're also sitting in a chair and you're slumped forward. All of these things are compounding and creating an athlete who either isn't aware or simply just doesn't know. Like, am I supposed to use my butt and my hamstrings when I squat? And like, we could have a debate about that too. But the point being is like, hey, like posterior chain engagement is actually midline stabilization, right? If I can't cue an athlete to use their glutes and their hamstrings, I know for a fact that the loading is going predominantly into their low back, regardless of what kind of their squat looks like.
Sure.
They're using their quads instead of their glutes and their hamstrings, and they're if they're not going to get hurt today, they will eventually, because they're simply not learning to use the entire back half of their body, which is also like, hey, my knee hurts. Okay, hamstring strength and stabilization is huge there. My back hurts. Yeah, your glutes don't fire when you do hinging, when you do squatting, anything. The only reason when you feel your glutes is when you lunge, because there's no way to avoid it. And like all of these things combined together, and when we're asking athletes to squat heavy, there has to be an element of like, hey guys, we need you to like learn how to use the back half of your body, less so for like, certainly for maximizing weight, because those are the strongest muscles in your body. But from like, again, kind of a longevity and just GPP perspective, an athlete who doesn't know how to use like the stabilizers on the back half of their body is like asking for injury in the long run. So a little bit of an aside for why I find like the hips back, knees out sort of thing, combine that with learning how to create tension, screwing your feet in, like the old K-Star stuff. Like if we can do all that, maybe someone's going to be a little more vertical, someone's going to be a little bit more horizontal, but they understand posterior chain engagement and midline stabilization, and now we're in business.
I find the glutes to be the linchpin, because
yeah, for sure.
So when we get to the bottom and I see again the knees cave, the arches go a little bit, to me, that is not having enough of the glutes turned on to keep your hips in whatever position they are in.
Yeah.
And what it does is we go back and then you're like, oh, coach said hamstrings. It's all hamstrings. Glutes are off. And if glutes are off and hips are off, then erectors are. That's just the way that that system works. And that's scary. And that's when you get the low bar style by accident on the way back up. And when you can really feel like that everything all the way from the low back up into the mid back really torched kind of the next day. So a little bit different than maybe your butt wink, that sort of thing. But I find that that's why we love the glute activation as part of the warm-ups on these days. Can you really teach? And I personally, my favorite variation of that, even if it's after something that you've already done, is having them squat with the bar on their back with the glute bands on still. Like, I really like that, because if you can feel what it's like in that transition period of maybe you're catching a bounce or you're just going to the bottom and sort of standing back up steady, I find that keeps the erectors on. It keeps the hamstrings as sort of as part of the party. And it makes sense, right? Because it's in the middle. It'd be really hard to turn those off and not have those other parts really engaged.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about thinking about someone, like everybody, maybe you're the athlete listening to this right now who this applies to, you're a coach, and you see the athlete who really struggles to actually drive their knees out. Maybe their arches actually aren't even collapsed, but they can't drive their knees out. There's just so much, like a function of society, but like we don't move laterally as much as maybe we should. So the lateral hips and the lateral stabilizers, your glute med, the outer hips, are hugely responsible for, one, like, man, you get a runner whose low back hurts, like glute meds, the outer glutes really help stabilize the hips and the pelvis when you're doing something like running or like a unilateral type movement. When we're talking about squatting, like the ability to drive the knees out, I try to explain this to athletes, like it's not an arbitrary cue. I don't want just like the visual component of, are the knees outward? Because you can push your knees out and have collapsed arches and be in a dog shit position. It's like, hey, the idea is that we can create tension in our hips when you squeeze your glute and turn on those lateral glutes, the rotators. Like that is what has helped creating the external rotation in the hip and for the knee to track out. And if we create that tension before you even start squatting, I don't need you to think about driving your knees out. You're presetting the position. I just need you to squat, and the knees are going to track in the direction that they're supposed to, assuming that those lateral stabilizers are actually doing their job and rotating outward. And it's the same thing, like a super often missed like element of warming up squatting is like internal rotation. So that's like adductors and inner thighs, which helps like with that bottom position. And then, the lateral, the glute med, the outer glutes, the ability to create external rotation at the hip. That's your knees out element, is like, if we don't have those two things, that's where we might see athletes doing some weird shit. And like the butt wink, you kind of alluded to that. That's totally like a multifaceted thing, but in a lot of ways, it's like if I got an athlete who's able to use their glutes, like all of them, that athlete is probably not butt winking. Like they are stabilizing their hips and their spine in a way that like it just doesn't happen, because they're getting rid of the potential problem areas for that movement or for that.
A lot of the butt wink, we'll go really quick on this. A lot of the butt wink is it's one of those squatters again that has the longer shin. And the easiest way to see that is if you ask someone to squat as low as they can and it looks like their butt cheeks are going to drag on the floor, if you have them sit way back into their squat, mechanically, they either need to be like the strongest person alive, or it's probably not the best position for them to get into.
Another fun way to kind of like prove this to you or your athletes is like, I love to do the extremes for athletes to see like, okay, well, here's what I'm recommending. Why am I recommending this? Well, let's look at the two opposite ends of the spectrum. I want your feet to be toed out slightly. It's like, okay, fuck, that's a little bit vague. Okay, well, do this. Point your toes inward like a pigeon and now try to squat. And it's like, what the fuck? I can't do that. It's like, obviously you can't do that. And also, you get someone who tries to squat low enough like that, even with their toes forward, and they get the butt wink. It's like, okay, now I want you to turn your toes out like a duck. So the hips are super open, and all of a sudden the butt wink goes away because there's nothing for your pelvis, your hip bones to run into, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you were alluding to the short femur or the long femur athlete. It's like my toes are straight forward and I get to the bottom and I butt wink. It's like, yeah, your bone structure is not conducive to that style of squat. I need you to turn your toes out. We create a little bit more room for the hips to sit down and the butt wink goes away. So I think, the butt wink is certainly like mechanical issues, but there's also just like, hey, we can make minor tweaks in your setup position and just like try to educate you on what's happening, and it'll go away.
Final back squat note. I swear to God.
I don't. Coming back.
Banded clamshells. If you struggle with the butt wink and your back hurts relating to 5x5s, every single time, could be you might have time during the cool down, you might have to do it after class, and it's going to sound insane, but 3x15 per side with the kind of band where you can get that full range of motion and really kind of contract at the top where you're the most open. Honestly, you can have no back pain, and you could also probably add 10 pounds to your 5-rep max by the end. So just a little nugget.
Dude, when my hips are rotating correctly, both like internal and external rotation, it's amazing how not loose, but like how much space I find I have at the bottom of my squat. It's a difference between feeling like tight and like, yes, I got to work something out, and just being like, and like firing on all cylinders.
All right. Next, we move on to the GPP lift, and we kind of say the same thing every time we do one of these episodes, but that's kind of the point of GPP. As we get closer to the open, just based on feedback and kind of throwing people a bone, we will bias the clean and the snatch a little bit more than we normally do. So you're going to see that in the phase. There's build up to the heavy snatch, there's build up to the heavy hang clean and jerk. And then when we have weeks where your sort of second strength day is gymnastics skill work, you're going to see what I personally would consider, and I don't know what you call it, Hunter, but sports specific lifting. I see a heavier deadlift in one of those weeks. I see a heavier front squat in one of those weeks. And it's really just having that GPP lifting rotation, which is either going to pop up directly in your traditional 20 minutes to build up to X, 15 minutes to build up to Y, or, you got to front squat 195 pounds or deadlift 275 pounds in one of your workouts. But it's just a nod to making sure that you guys know that there is a method to the madness when it comes to exposure to these things. And we maintain variance through different lifts, and whether it's in WOD or just actually a solo lifting session.
Yeah. I mean, I think like here's the problem. So from a programmer and coach perspective, let's say I'm writing programming exclusively for CrossFit Hunter, and it's predominantly, like most affiliate athletes, the Monday through Friday kind of runs my life. Some folks get in on Saturday, some folks get in on Sunday. From a programming perspective, those days don't necessarily aren't in the same rotation, so to speak. Like you're not gonna get our lift only day on Saturday, like ever, really. That doesn't mean we're not going to go heavy on a Saturday from time to time, but like the 5x5 back squat's not going to fall on a Saturday. So we're a bit kind of constrained to the 5 days a week. 2 of those days per week as lifting days, and all of a sudden 40% of what is meant to be a general physical preparedness program, about half, is now exclusively weightlifting. So an athlete who is, let's say, a 4-day-a-week athlete just happens to come in on 2 of those lifting days. Now 50% of their program is weightlifting, and 50% of their programming is, let's hope for their sake, just gnarly conditioning pieces, some shorter, medium, shit workouts, because that's what that person needs. There is not a GPP athlete who needs 50% of their training to be exclusively weightlifting. We can have that. I'd love to have that argument with someone who's not a CrossFitter in the context of getting somebody fit for the purpose of life, but there is a lot of utility in putting a moderate to heavy barbell in the right set, rep, and weight in a metcon when you're breathing hard. And it just brings so much of the CrossFit methodology together. It's like, we just talked about for fucking 30 minutes about bracing, midline stabilization, and full range of motion. It's like, the greatest expression of that from a CrossFit perspective is, can you do that when your heart rate's at 180, right? And like from there we scale back and say like, hey, I know you can front squat that 195-pound barbell, but like, can you do it with sound mechanics when your heart rate's at 180 after having just done 20 bar facing burpees or something like that? The ability to do that says a lot more about an athlete's fitness than their ability to do that movement in a vacuum as a weightlifting only session. And also happens to move the needle a hell of a lot more on their overall work capacity and therefore fitness. So plenty of days, plenty of weeks where like you do have kind of like, you know, I'm looking at, let's see, week 2 is a great example where, you know, one day you have 20 minutes to build up to a heavy single with the squat snatch, but there is a metcon that follows. It's just squat snatch, but it's like, hey, you're going to get your heavy breathing here. We're going to do the things that I just talked about, you know, mechanics and consistency. And then let's do that with your heart rate elevated. And then later on that week, you have the lifting session, but there's not, you know, I want you to be lifting heavy in a metcon, but I can't ask for 40 to 50% of a GPP program to be weightlifting only. Yeah. It's just no longer a CrossFit program.
The hypothetical person that we would be arguing with here doesn't really speak our language. You would be,
sure.
You know what I mean? You would be having an argument. It'd be like having an argument. You're on vacation and you're screaming at a cab driver or, you know, just a pedestrian in another country, and you're speaking completely different languages, because our athletes, if you go to other gyms, I don't want to be like a dick, but our athletes the people that come to our gym are stronger because of GPP.
Yeah. I mean, we
so
just
like go ahead and
deadlift PRs on the board.
Yeah. So for me, it's like we don't have time for this. If it didn't work, we wouldn't do it.
Yeah, we're also kind of like skirting around the elephant in the room, which is that like, just because it says metcon doesn't mean that there's like, oh, I'm not doing strength work at all, right? It's like, that's the nature of CrossFit. It's like, this is like a great kind of little primer on energy systems for coaches, but like, you know, when we do the 5x5 Texas method, it's predominantly that phosphocreatine explosive, you know, kind of pathway. When we're talking about like, see if I can find a workout here that makes sense. Yeah, week 1. Oh, there's the fucking goddamn 195 front squat. Fucking kill me. Okay, you know, remember, like, our energy systems are working in conjunction all at the same time in one capacity or another, right? So, like, if I'm in the middle of a 20-minute metcon, like that, yeah, sure, a 20-minute workout is by nature, is like aerobic in nature, but in that 20-minute metcon, I'm called upon to do 3 front squats at 225. Like, my aerobic energy system is not the one powering me through those 3 front squats, right? Like, I'm breathing hard. That's the baseline. Like, but as soon as I put that bar on my front rack and I start squatting it, like, I'm tapping in to that phosphocreatine pathway, and hopefully I have developed robust enough energy systems in order to be able to handle that loading. But, right, it's like, oh, I couldn't front squat that 195-pound bar 12 times in a 15-minute workout, therefore my aerobic energy system is insufficient. It's like, not necessarily. It's like, oh, okay, well, my strength is insufficient. Well, not necessarily either. It's like your fitness is insufficient, right? It's like all of these things are working together at the same time. And just because it doesn't say, you know, strength, or there isn't a weight component to the score, doesn't mean that athletes are not getting stronger when they are doing the workout as intended, with good mechanics, consistency, intensity at the right, you know, the appropriate weights. So, like, I don't want to say, I'm trying to think. Louis Simmons, I want to say Louis Simmons, but like he's famous for like, he was the GPP king, right? For West Side Barbell, doing sled pushing and like mixing up the lifting on such a consistent basis. But I'm trying to remember. Someone said, like, what I'm trying to remember is CrossFit is the best accessory program for weightlifting. I don't remember who said that. Maybe it was you. Yeah, maybe. It's like, but it is true, right? It's like,
it's the greatest strength accessory program ever created.
Yes.
And that is based on Louis. Louis, and it trended out to his disciples. over time. Like John Wellborn talking about doing aerobic work for his NFL athletes is like crazy, right? It never would have been the case before. But Louis, like you show up at his gym and he puts like 500 pounds on a sled and tells you to go walk for like 15 minutes with it. And he's like, if you aren't in shape, like how do you expect to be like a physical person, basically? So GPP and that whole concept is, a lot of it is from Louis, which is really cool. And honestly, that came from people coming over from Olympic weightlifting and being like Olympic hopefuls and then hitting PRs in CrossFit. And it's like, well, how's that possible? They're lifting less, they're in better shape. And wow, I mean, when you do 9,000 pull-ups, maybe your upper back gets stronger or your grip strength goes up, like things of that nature. All right, we're going to move on to stimulus bomb number 2, and that is bar pulling. When we talk about bar pulling, we're talking about pull-ups, chest to bar pull-ups, bar muscle-ups, toes to bar, and then there's sort of a slash in there for muscle-ups because there are ring muscle-ups in this phase as well. And again, the style for GPP that has worked best for us is that bouncing back and forth between a dedicated session and then putting it into an actual workout. So you're going to kind of see a mix of those things over the course of the phase where you might get a single chest to bar skill sort of gymnastic strength day, and then you get it in the workout, and then you'll see it again for the bar muscle-ups, and then you'll see it in the workout, that sort of deal. I would like to focus here on just put the stimulus aside. Like, hey, guess what? You're moving your body a long distance and, you know, you're using your body weight. It's a stimulus bomb. Everybody knows what it feels like to do a big set of chest to bar and then come down from the pull-up bar and have your heart rate go up 30 beats per minute. This is such a great opportunity for the concept of teaching shapes and teaching skill transfer and how sort of one thing is everything. And, you know, starting with the basics of, you know, pinky knuckle on top of the bar. And we're not just flailing here. We're opening and closing the shoulder on the pull-up bar. How do we create leverage over the hip? What is the difference between a pull-up and a chest to bar and a bar muscle-up? You can teach so much in each week that can transfer to an athlete really understanding how to manipulate their body through space while holding on to rings or a pull-up bar.
Anytime we do gymnastics work, especially like skill sessions where we're actually breaking a movement down a little bit more than we might usually, I try to remind athletes that, like, if you can master the hollow and the arch position, like, done. Gymnastics are done. That's it. Mm-hmm. Bye. Like, we can't do a handstand push-up. You can do the hollow and arch, but we can't do a handstand push-up. Okay, like, there's from there, like, okay, well, I can do hollow and arch, but I can't do X movement. Okay, now we're talking probably about a body weight to strength ratio. Like, are you carrying around too much body mass? Great conversation. Probably would be a little bit softer in how you present that to an athlete. But again, like, gymnastics are strength to body weight ratio. I want to get better at gymnastics. I don't want to change anything about my body composition. Like, we got an issue. And also, let's not forget the gymnastics is lower, but therefore higher on the movement hierarchy than weightlifting and throwing, right? It's like nutrition, metcon, gymnastics. What you can't, as a coach, trying to emphasize the importance of those hollow and arch positions and say, like, hey, like, you do kip swings on the pull-up bar, fantastic. Like, okay, now do a knee raise, like kipping knee raise. Hollow arch, you're just bringing your knees higher. Toes to bar, no, it's hollow arch. Kipping pull-up, hollow arch. Muscle up, hollow arch. Handstand push-up, maintain a hollow position. Don't lose your midline, press. Like, all of the gymnastics movements funnel into, can I, like, master those positions, the hollow and arch, and then coordinate my body, which is another conversation for a lot of folks to, and then there's a mobility component as well. But, like, if I can master the basics of those two positions, I can then, like, and something is wrong with my gymnastics, it's way easier to diagnose what the actual issue is if the assumption is like, well, this person has at least an understanding that basically all gymnastics, at least the upper body ones, funnel through, can I do the hollow and arch position perfectly? Can I put my hands on the pull-up bar in the correct spot? Am I compensating for range of motion by putting my thumb on top of the bar rather than underneath? Another topic we could do an entire podcast on. Yeah, and the bar pull gymnastics, I think, is a little bit more accessible for folks. Not that we don't do the pushing gymnastics, but, like, upper body pressing is a little bit different than upper body pulling. And at the end of the day, like, pretty much all of these metcons or skill pieces that have pulling gymnastics in them give the opportunity for a coach to tell an athlete, hey, like, you don't have any strict pull-ups? Like, no problem. You're going to do strict pull-ups until you can do them, and you're not going to kip until you demonstrate the requisite strength to be able to do that, because we're interested in your shoulders remaining attached to your body.
Yeah. Yeah, and like everything that you said as a caveat to your point about hollow arch, you could argue is still just hollow arch.
Sure, yeah, for sure.
Right.
I mean, even like I said, you said the strict movements too, like shapes, doing a proper strict pull-up is like, that's a hollow position pulling gymnastics movement.
And a hip extension is just transitioning from hollow to arch. You know what I mean? It's just opening back up into that position. Yeah, and you're not in true hollow arch if you don't have the mobility, right? We can't get into those proper gymnastics positions. Strength to body weight ratio isn't necessarily where we need it to be. We're not opening and closing with the shoulder. We're not using the lats. We're not doing sort of the hanging variation of hollow arch because we don't have, again, the strength to sort of compensate in that. So coaches, this is just another opportunity, like when we talk about doing the front squat and the clean together, where you can talk about how, hey, this is an easier variation in terms of how technical it is. This is the same thing as you work your way through this. And one of those things where this could be a really good topic to go over in Telegram and sort of talk through, because you can make some really significant changes to an athlete's gymnastics by being kind of obsessed with the basics and going through those, breaking down the component parts of the movements. Okay, next, stimulus bomb number 3, and there is an asterisk to this one based on feedback from gyms and equipment. So we have a rowing bias because we are getting closer to the open, but it doesn't always display on the program as a rowing bias. So this is something as a coach where you could sort of pick out that athlete that wants to do a little bit better in the open, and hey, on those machine rotation days, guess where you're sitting?
Not the C2 bike.
No, you're not. No, don't get Hunter started on the C2 bike. So what you'll see
8 more
is
podcasts to shoot about
kind
very
of
specific
exactly
things.
The back and forth of there's always either rowing in a workout or rowing / machine rotation in your cardio days. Honestly, originally, I think a lot of the machine rotation stuff was being friendly to gyms, and we are even more cognizant of it, being in colder areas, just because it's hard to send athletes out on a run, even now, honestly, especially like a 5 a.m., 6 a.m. class, that's pretty gnarly and starts to get honestly unsafe with the ice and the snow. But talk about stimulus bomb. When you don't get the localized, so this is for a GPP athlete, not necessarily a sports specific athlete, we don't get that localized muscle fatigue or just the mental fatigue of the same movement over and over, you can really bury yourself. Like if I'm going to do round 1 on the rower, round 2 on the Echo bike, and round 3 on the runner or the skier or the C2 bike, whatever it is, you can hold some paces, right? And that's one tool that I use a lot in like competition prep programs. But the barrier to entry to exceeding expectations in the open is being really, really, really good on the rower, physically and mentally. So on those machine rotation days where it doesn't explicitly say you're on the rower, you need to bias the rower if it's not like your number 1 strength, if you care a lot about the open. If you don't, thumbs up, like fantastic. That's not our number 1 focus, not our number 1 goal here. But this time of year, I always think it's important to tell people, hey, let's not start sitting on the rower in mid to end of February. Let's start doing it in December. If you're going to do the competitor extra zone 2 day, get your ass on a rower. There's plenty of rowing in the competitor extra. And then on those machine days, the way that you can carry out that bias that we've talked about in years past is by sitting your keister on a rower.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the fact that I think the rower is the best machine that we have in CrossFit, aside, running, I would probably make a different argument, different machine. But like, we could also, to our previous argument about GPP and CrossFit being the best accessory work for weightlifting, like you get somebody who wants to improve their pulling gymnastics and they're not using a rower as well for conditioning. It's like, hey, there's an easy route to convince somebody to improve their pulling stamina. We use we've used the ski erg and the rower for zone 2 work, and I've seen people get really good at things like muscle ups, thinking, Caroline, who did a shitload of zone 2 skiing, and all of a sudden muscle ups are now like real fucking easy. Little bit specific there, but like, again, you get somebody who wants to either show out in the open, move on to quarterfinals, or just simply wants to like, hey, I want to get better at my pulling gymnastics. Like, motherfucker, I got a concept too with your name right on it here. Enjoy.
Number one thing, so my kryptonite is pulling gymnastics and rowing couplet, or honestly even a triplet with those two in there. And I present as better at muscle ups than I actually am because I'm fast twitch. So like if you ask me right now, I could give you 13, but then the second set would be like 1.
Right.
But I'm pretty good at muscle ups. Those are one of my stronger movements.
Concur.
And if I got a row before, I'm cooked. I tried so many different things because again, as a remote coach, if someone comes to me and has that same issue, I want to know on a personal level, like what the best thing is. Zone 2 rowing. And I'm talking slow, guys. My zone 2 on the rower is like a 418. And I'm going really slow. But the biggest change that I made in terms of the ability for my body to clear waste, in the wrist and the forearm and the bicep was by doing low intensity, for a really long time and getting, God knows how many, thousands of strokes on the rower. So if you struggle with that and you care about making a change, that recovery day zone 2 rowing is super powerful. So another asterisk here would be we try to be really friendly to the members when we get close to Christmas. And you'll sort of notice that like one example would be the gymnastics bias goes to deficit push-ups. I think it's on Christmas Eve. We're just trying to give people a way to do the workouts, whether you guys do an open gym or you have classes, still great workouts, or, they're actually at home. So we have, on that same day, I think we have like machine AMRAP where at the very least somebody could run if they don't have a machine at home, that sort of thing. So any of the caveats to a bias around those times are going to be related to making sure that people just get good workouts in, get a little bit stronger, get a little bit fitter during the holidays.
Yeah, I think just for like we're talking about, as we're past Thanksgiving now, into essentially Christmas and New Year's, a lot of the program is written like, because I'm at this gym, like the first people I think about are the members. Okay, what is the habit of our members on these holidays? A decent number of folks like to come in on the eves if we don't have classes.
Yep.
A small number, but fewer like to come in on the actual, Christmas Day. If the gym's open, we'll inevitably get a few. New Year's Day, a little bit more. That's not as much of a holiday. But the point being is like if you're a coach or owner looking at the programming, and I put this in the December programming document, like feel free to move things around. Understand that we did position things in the week to be like, okay, if done in this order, like people are still getting the stuff that we want. And if they miss, either the eve holiday day, the actual holiday day, or both, they're still getting a good blend of fitness on the other 3 days.
Yep.
But it really comes down to like what kind of the culture and the habits of your community are. So you can certainly feel free to swap something around, move it, it's like, hey, we're going to be closed on this day, so I'm going to chop this day out of the programming completely, or I actually like this day, I'm going to put it on another day and chop the other one out. Just make sure to do your due diligence, kind of look over the week, like, hey, I'm cutting this day out. What do you think about that? You can ask in Telegram, or 2, just kind of like step back, look at the program. Okay, I accidentally put 3 15-minute metcons as the only days of the week. We should probably mix that up a little bit. Or, at the end of the day, we're kind of counting pennies here. But the point is, feel free to move things around a little bit based on the habits and the culture of your gym, understanding that people's gym schedules are a little bit odd and weird during this time of year.
All right, so we bury this at the end, and it's not intentional in the way of like people really want to know the biased information here, but we also have some biases in the engine program. So you get a 3-day-a-week add-on to your program, I want to say it's free, but it's an add-on that comes with every subscription. And you know, the joke on the podcast is always, if you have an engine class at your gym, whether it's 3 days a week or like Misfit Gym Portland, 1 day a week on Sunday, the athletes that go to that end up kicking your ass in metcons a lot. And the day one bias is the step up, which honestly, boy, like I could stand to, you know, I got the new garage gym going. I could stand to, no pun
get
intended,
a little posterior
stand up.
chain engagement.
Yeah, get a little engagement. And it's the kind of thing where with Chris, it's definitely equal parts. Like there's a hazing element to it. Like you earn you earn, you know, what you do within the engine workouts. But again, like stimulus, you get fitter. Like that's what we're looking for there. And we are on day 2 pushing into what he refers to as the gassier intensities on Concept 2 machines. So peace be with you. That's always fun. And then day 3 is a really cool class that is run at Misfit Gym Portland on Sundays that we think is the best option, not just for the programming, but for your members and what they're looking for to sort of end the week and go into another week, is essentially really like low skill barbell free CrossFit, like longer duration. You know, you'll see things like lighter wall balls and single unders and really just kind of a like nowhere to hide longer duration beat down, but it's got enough variation and wrinkle to it that it's fun. I would say the engine program is the type of thing where when we go back and do like a survey, the gyms that use it really love it. So make sure that if you're, you know, thinking about subscribing to the program, or if you are already on it and don't use it, that you find a way to either give it away to your members or incorporate it into what you do, because it works incredibly well. Next thing would be that competitor extra. And basically any day that there is only a strength movement, there's going to be a conditioning in the competitor extra. Anytime that like there's less of a skill bias in the week, there's going to be a skill there. Anytime it's conditioning only, you're typically going to see, unless it's a really heavy metcon, you're going to see strength work there. And that competitor extra is based on creating enough exposure to the movements that athletes will do at the open and quarterfinals level. And I personally think it's a huge retention tool, because those gyms that have open gym culture, they typically don't get involved in the community. They're not, you know, necessarily interacting with coaches and other members. And when they're on the fence about whether they want to stay at the gym, they don't have that same pull and that same support system to keep them there. Also, don't you want your competitors at your gym to actually be fit? When you do class and then mix and match a bunch of random stuff, it just doesn't work. The competitor extra is actually based on the program itself. And then basically you've got daily warm-ups, workout notes, scaling. You're going to get all of that information every single day within the program, no matter where you subscribe. Anything you would like to add to that, Hunter?
No, I don't think so. I think you put a bow on that nicely.
So we're going to end with life
members
chat.
here like the, sorry, yeah, I was just going to add, members here really like the engine program. We used to coach it multiple days per week. We don't anymore, but we provide it to members so that they can do the day 1 and day 2 stuff should they choose to. And then what you alluded to, I don't think Chris would take offense to this, because it is what those Sunday classes are. It's that long kind of slog grind. It is, this is a bit of a backhanded compliment,
his words to
but
explain.
it's like, it's what everybody who has never done CrossFit correctly wants CrossFit to be, right?
Sure.
It's a 30-minute AMRAP where I kind of try moderately hard. I feel really good about doing it in the moment. I feel really good about it after. But if that was the only thing you ever did for your fitness, like you would be you would not be nearly as fit as you think you are.
14% of the programming at Misfit Gym Portland. I'll put that out there. That's what it is.
But it is. But when it's put in like that, it's like it's great. It's a perfect
incredibly
like
effective.
We've had gyms ask about like, hey, we're open 7 days a week. It's like beautiful Sunday engine class, like perfect. Or call it don't call it engine, call it CrossFit class, and use the engine workout for that day, or any of the 3 engine programs or engine day workouts. But members really enjoy it here. It's a perfect like weekend kind of class. So really good option there for your gym.
For sure. All right. So we're going to end with live chat. This is Hunter's last podcast for a while. Paige is going to be joining me next week and for the foreseeable future. I know that we've sort of done this song and dance a few times, but I also know that the people that listen to the podcast appreciate you, Hunter, the amount of information that you've given them over the years. I think you provide a level of entertainment that we will show here in a second. And I would have to guess that of the average 38 fucks, you are definitely at least 20. I didn't have the time to do it, but you got to be at least 25 of those, right? There was 1 week, though.
Well, I thought you were going to say 25%. I was feeling a little sad about that number.
25 of the 38.
Rookie numbers,
yes.
got to pump those up.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I got to imagine it's
from
over 50.
Myself and all of the listeners, thank you for all the information that you've given us, and we're happy to give you back to the Misfit Gym Portland members, but really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. You know, it's still Misfit Gym Portland over here, so when everybody decides to venture into Maine, I probably wouldn't do it now. I don't know what you're looking at out the window, but it's fucking happening here, and I'm on suicide watch. We got 6:30 p.m. class canceled, so we're just getting a classic GPP of sleet, snow, and rain just coming down on us. Is this the fuck meter?
Okay, here we go. We have the Misfit podcast swear meter, and I was able to go back to August 10th. And honestly, it was fitting that I had time to go back to August 10th of this year, because we said fuck 85 times on August 5th. It was the CrossFit Games programming breakdown.
Yes, I was going to say it had to be. Was it the Masters one or the regular one?
The regular one. It was almost 2 hours long, and we did have like a 40-minute live chat, and you were coming off of like a nasty workout, so the amount of like the Venn diagram was beautiful.
Yeah,
but that is second place was, and this probably isn't a coincidence, on October 21st, we said fuck 68 times, and we got the review right after. So the second highest that I could find, it was like, all right, guys, like slipping a few in is not a big deal. But if you say fuck 68 times in an hour,
I decided
our fucks per minute were over 1 on that episode. And we averaged 38, but that includes the week. That includes the week where we only said 7. So we're probably looking
we're back on the upswing, though, it appears.
Yeah, we're back on the upswing. So let's see. We've got 85, 30, 30, 33, 50, 42, 31, 36, 43, and then the 68 that prompted the unnecessary fucks or unnecessary F-bombs galore, I believe is what it was. Yeah, I think if we look at that bottom line there, I think Paige and I can keep it below 25. I
was going to say, Paige has got some shoes to fill.
Yeah, and she curses for sure. Her last name's Semenza. I don't want to, put anything out there.
In my mother's maiden name's Montantes.
Yeah. This is all tracking here. So that's our swear meter. Hunter, you had some very important golf updates for the people.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely the place to wrap. All right, stats for the people. 24.
Okay.
Started at a 20.4 handicap. So this is like just actually starting to track.
Sure.
Pulled that thing down to an 8.5 by the end of the year. I think the low was an 8.1. I couldn't find that, but ended at 8.5. This year we went from 8.5 to 7.8 with a low of 7.1.
And obviously
the beginning of the year goal
beginner
was,
gains are serious.
Yeah.
Chopping another stroke off when you get down below 10 is not the same as going from 24 to 23.
I had very wishful thinking that 5, if I had put the same amount of effort in, which I would say probably a little bit less time spent this year, but
sure.
I thought I could get closer to 5, and it just did not all come together often enough to make it happen. High in 2024 was 94. High in 2025 was a 95. I dropped a 95 at some point. It was not a proud moment of mine.
That'd be so proud moment for me.
Lows were 76s both years. I just had a lot more of them this year. But probably the most important one, scoring average, went down from an 84.3 to an 81.7 this year. So trending in the right direction. I was hoping goals were to see a 5 point something, see 5 as the first digit of that handicap, and then to find a 75 or a couple of those around the year. But none such. Closed yesterday. Fucking, it's shitting and pissing from the sky everywhere. And we're in simulator mode for the rest.
Timing.
Next
You're a
6
small
months.
business owner. You have no
I am.
hobbies.
Yeah. I no longer have any free time. I'm actually instead looking to install a simulator of some sort in the gigantic garage that I have out here. So we'll figure something out.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, we'll fucking keep grinding.
What's
Rain
the
or
goal in
shine.
2026? Do you know yet? Is it still 5?
I feel like it's got to be. I don't think it's.
Sure.
I don't think it would be wise to update that to make it even lower. But
Sure. Yeah. But a stroke a year, if you had the macro view, is probably pretty good.
Yeah, I think my long term goal, and who knows, maybe 2 years from now I won't like golf anymore and it won't matter, but I think I can get down to scratch over a long enough time horizon. I understand that's a lofty one, but
you don't have your, we're talking about 2 years. You don't have your 10,000 hours. Whatever that is
for
in
sure.
golf,
Yeah.
whatever that thing is, like there's a point where, like, I can say from baseball and football, there is a point where it doesn't, in snowboarding, honestly, I have my 10,000 hours in snowboarding because I didn't go for 10 years when I came home from Maine, and I was scared, and I was ripping the first day that I went.
She comes
it's
back.
It's just there. It's just built in. So
Yep.
the first year that you pick up a club and go start swinging, and you're like, there it is.
Yep.
You'll know, like, okay, now we're cooking. Like, I've got my 10,000 hours in. This is a very natural thing. Because talk about component parts. My God, watching those golf videos is terrifying.
Yeah, it's fucking
many
wild.
pieces.
I'm working on change.
So
Yeah,
many pieces.
I've thought about that. It's just like, for someone like Alex Cardamone, not touching a club for 3 months is not a huge deal. He's going to pick it back up and operate at a certain standard. For me, having only, he's played for 25 years, having only played for 2, like the first time you pick up a club after 6 months is,
what is this?
maybe the 7th swing of my career as opposed to the 30th. And it's like, that's not the same thing. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we're shanking balls in simulators for the next couple months, trying to get some tour-like hip rotation. But
my
until
live
then,
chat is going
what do
to
you
be
got?
about 30 seconds long. Unpacking is not cool. Like, we
heard.
got rid of a lot of stuff, and we have too much stuff. Luckily, I will learn this lesson because I'm moving into the house that we're building in 8 or 9 months, that, like, you can't be bringing shit you don't need to the, like, actual place that you're staying. So I got to go back inside right now and deal with some issues, live chat related. And yeah, I mean, moving, and listen, where we are, like in the Redlands and Grand Junction, is beautiful, and it's good that it is, because again, moving, especially with a toddler, is a wild ride.
Yeah, that ain't
I can
it.
tell you that right now.
Has Carter adapted anything new Colorado specific? We still
he tells me that when we're taking a walk, we're not in Colorado, but the up on top of the cliffs is Colorado, and I got to take him there. I haven't taken him to Colorado yet because he needs to get on top of those cliffs.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the
understand.
spirit of Colorado, right?
Sure.
The mountains and the adventure and all that stuff. He's like, this walking path? And I'm like, dude, look at the view. And he's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm 2 years old.
Yeah.
I want to be on top of the cliffs.
I want to be
It's like, all right,
on the
buddy,
view.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, he talks about Colorado a lot. He asked me to go to Colorado a lot while we're in Colorado.
I mean, dad of the year material right there. Hey kid,
Yeah.
I got a surprise for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Colorado.
Right. And his toys, unboxing the toys he already had, was like Christmas times 10.
Yeah.
So excited. I could just be like, oh my God.
Here's an
it's a fire
actual, like, this is a tough one. What sports fan is Carter going to be?
So I had this conversation recently because 2 of my best friends, husband, CSU Rams, wife, CU Buffaloes. And those are like bitter rivals, like so fun going to the CSU CU games in college. So their little boy has Rams shirts. He's got Buff shirts. the seminal age where they start watching, whoever is good or has that like Ken Griffey Jr., Kobe, the thing that they can latch onto.
Something to latch onto, yeah.
Exactly. I think will make the call, right? So like an example, I guess right now I'm trying to think of, so right now the Avalanche are incredible. One of the best goalies in the league. McKinnon is, it would be considered the best player in the world in a lot of other eras. It just happens to be that maybe the second best player ever is also alive and playing currently.
Yep.
But McKinnon is, he usually has more points than McDavid.
Yeah.
And the Bruins, while
Cale Makar's got more points than
they're
most
like
forwards,
fighting for their lives, and they look good standings wise. I'm not buying it. I could be wrong. Hockey's fickle like that. There's a lot of parity in hockey, but like, I'm probably latching on to McKinnon and the Avs, and all of my friends are wearing the jerseys. If I'm growing up at this point. But the amount of propaganda, I mean, this kid's going to be wearing Bruins jerseys. I'm going to take him to the Garden. I'm going to take him to Denver when the Bruins come. We're going to get yelled at by random people who drink too much beer. I'm going to do the work.
Get a beer dumped on that kid's head early.
I have a 4-foot-tall Wally, the Green Monster bobblehead. I have a 4-foot-tall Bobby Orr bobblehead.
All right.
Where
so
the propaganda,
you're doubling down. We're not making allegiance changes as 40-year-old.
Oh my God,
okay. Yeah.
No. And honestly, being the heel and being a pain in the ass is like less of my brand as an adult, but is a huge part of my brand as a human being. Fucking with people is just fun.
As an average human over the last couple decades.
Yes. The last serious fist fight I got into was because I wore a Kobe Bryant jersey to a Nuggets-Lakers playoff game where the Lakers waxed them.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll try to keep Carter out of the fist fights for the most part, but the propaganda for the sports is going to be going strong for sure. And I'm going to be really sad if he's a CU fan. That's going to hurt a little bit. It's like a really good school, though, and it'll be in state, and maybe he'll want to go there, and maybe I can talk him out of it. He loves trucks, construction management, Colorado State University. Let's go, big dog.
College is going to be gone by the time he gets there anyway, so.
Seriously, right? Yep, true. All right, did we do it?
We did it.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Head to GorillaMind.com/Misfit or use the code word Misfit at GorillaMind for checkout. You support the podcast and save money at the exact same time. If you're looking for the WANJIRU phase, you get 2 weeks for free by going to teammisfit.com. Click on sign up now. Stream Fit, Sugar Water, or Push Press. You can also ask me, coach at misfitathletics.com via email for a 2-week version of the PDF so you guys can get a peek at that and see if that's what you want to get into. Also, any questions, obviously do that. And I will send out another link to the affiliates for the Telegram. Let's get in there. Let's chat. If you want to chat with Hunter, if you want to continue your communications with Hunter, I'm guessing it's not going to be on social media, and it's much more likely going to be on Telegram. Individual
Telegram,
programming needs.
You can email me to hunter@misfitgymportland.com. That's probably the best route. I have dabbled back. Instagram
You're gonna
is
have
back
to.
on the phone.
You're supposed to
I've got
build a brand.
I know.
It's a whole thing.
Yep. Keep an eye out.
Keep an eye out for
Post some
Hunter's
random
grand
trolls,
return to Instagram until he quits again.
Grand return.
All right,
I know
big dog.
everybody's
Thanks
really
again
waiting
for
it.
everything podcast related and otherwise. I'll see you around, and if the people want to find you, head to Telegram or hunter@misfitgymportland.com. See you guys next week.
Later.
Misfits!
All right, you ragtag bunch of misfits.
You're a scrappy little misfit, just like me.
Biggest bunch of misfits I ever set eyes on.